Alright, hi there. So today I'm going to be showing you how to make some different effects loops. So I apologize ahead of time. This might be a lot of me just quiet time, a lot of silent moments where I'm just working. So I apologize in advance for that. But let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so first thing first is I'm going to make sure my stage is our normal 720 by 480, because that's what we're supposed to be working in for our aspect ratio. I do have two videos I found already that I really liked that have a fire loop and an explosion with layers. So you can go ahead and look at those for those specific effects. But for today, what I'm going to be going over is a firework. Oops. Help if this wasn't white. We'll go over fireworks. We're going to go over a sort of sizzle, like we might see sparking on the edge of a fuse. And we're going to go over a water pour. Okay, so let's jump into it, okay? So first thing is first, let's talk about a firework, okay? So I'm going to rename this layer. Okay, so one thing I want to do first is I'm going to click on my stage and I'm going to change my stage color to kind of this, to a dark blue. Mimic a night sky a little bit, okay? Alright. And now this only requires the brush tool and an eraser and some patience. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so to start, so we're going to have a little line, right? So we're going to start this line down here. Going to make a new layer, or I'm sorry, a new keyframe, and then we're going to hit delete to delete that part. I'm going to have my onion skin on. Yeah. Okay, new keyframe. Delete. Oops. Keeping it neat. And this is the fireworks shooting up into the sky. And now we're not moving up too much more, but it's getting shorter and a little wider, okay? And here, and one of the cool things about explosions is that what happens before it gets bigger is it actually gets smaller, right? And now that we're at a circle, we're going to be exploding. So now we're going back out. So we're going to make a scribbly circle. Next frame. Slightly bigger scribbly circle. And now we're going to take our eraser and we're going to scribble some more over it. And this is going to help break it apart into little sections, little bits. Okay, and here we don't have to delete it, we just draw over it. That might be a little too big after. Okay, and again we're going to delete, or not delete, we're going to erase some so they're nice and sparkly. Next frame. get a little bigger because it explodes pretty fast, right? Okay, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my smoothing is not very high because that might be a big part of why this is being so laggy. And again, just kind of scribble. I'll give Animate a moment. It's having a hard time because I have some other stuff running. Okay, and now we kind of want to get a little looser on the outsides. So now it's starting to spread out, okay? Give Animate a moment. Brush a little bigger. I just want to make it look like they aren't all connected. Okay, so if we go through, you can see how it goes, right? Okay, so looking good. Let's keep going. And now things are going to kind of start to fall now that they're kind of bigger, right? So we're going to start to dip down a little bit. So now let's just add a couple little dots here where it's starting to fall. Going into the next one, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select everything, and using my arrow keys is I'm just going to tap down a couple times. Now I'm just going to actually erase a little bit more. Now that's exploded out. Now I can add a couple more fallout pieces. Right? Okay, one thing I'm going to do right here too is I'm going to make this one a little bigger. So I'm going to hit my Q. So it looks like it goes true. This one could be a little bigger too. Seems to me like this is moving a little slow in here, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete a couple of these. Move frames. It's a little smaller again. Okay. I'm gonna erase some of these fallout lines. Okay, now going forward. Now that I've looked at these, I can make this even bigger. Make it a little lower. Let's erase more. And give it a moment. A little bit more fallout. Right? A little bit more, a little bigger, a little lower, and a little more erased. See how that works? Same thing here. A little bigger, a little lower. And more erased. Give it a moment to think. Let's run real slow with my recording program. A little bigger, a little lower, and more erased. Since this stuff is off screen, I'm going to go ahead and just delete it. Maybe that'll save my CPU a little bit of stress. Maybe in this one we finally delete everything. Okay, so let's play through that on a loop. Right? If you want it to hold longer, you can. So what we would do is where you want it to hold longer is you would add a frame where you want it to hold longer. Let's try this now. So in like the fallout, you maybe want slower. Just add some frames here. Right? Firework. You can add a couple more if you really want to. And of course, when you're animating this, you can always add in more frames too. You can come in here and say, okay, I'm going to add another keyframe. And maybe the only thing that really changes is just you make it a little smidge bigger and a slight smidge smaller. Right. Or you can go in and just do frame to frame again. Now that you kind of know this timing where it starts off big and then it gets slower. Okay, but let's say we're happy with this. We don't mind that it's a little choppy because it's an effect and it's fireworks are a little choppy anyways, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna, because we have animation in here and we want the animation in the symbol, is we're actually gonna cut the layer instead of just hitting F6. We're gonna insert new symbol. And we're going to make sure it's a movie clip this time. Asset underscore FX underscore firework. I'm going to hit OK. And up here, we're going to paste our layer. So our animation is in here. We can come back now out to scene 1 and we can bring out this firework. Just to show what we would do with it with a movie clip. Okay, maybe I want to change the angle a little bit. But what I can do here under filters is I can add a glow. And this glow would probably be white. It could be any color. I'm going to change quality to high. I'm going to make it a little bit more glowy. I'm also going to add, let's see here. Let's try that. Let's have it come out a couple times. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command Return to view it. So you can see what it looks like when it's glowing. Right? Kind of cool, right? I can also change, let's see here, display. I can also change my blending layer to like screen. So let's see how that changes it. So you can see it's a little bit brighter now. And it incorporates a little bit of that blue in the background. Let's see, we can do hard light. That makes it very vividly yellow. Okay, so we have some different things. I don't mind the normal. Normal looks good to me. So one thing we want to do here is we want to select this, and in our properties panel, where is it? Don't know if there's a way we can make it just animate once in a movie clip. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to know how many frames there are in here. So we're going to go back inside the symbol to check. Come on. Sorry, everything is freezing with this recording program going. Okay. So this is 27 frames. So let's come back up to scene 1. And let's make it go to 27, okay? And now what we're going to do is we're going to... Can I duplicate? Yeah, I'm going to duplicate the layer. And this is the easy way to do it. Because if I duplicate the layer, I'm also duplicating the effects. So now I can come over here. Using my selection tool to move it, I can come down a little lower, and I can also drag this over a bit. Turn loop off. So now these are going to be staggered when they go up and end. One other thing I can do too is I can go over here, select it, under color effect. We can go to tint, and we can change the color. We should be able to, theoretically. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that looks the same. Okay, advanced. There we go. So we can go under advanced and we can use these sliders to change the color. Right? Same effect, but now it's just a different color. And we can layer these two and we can change their sizes. So maybe I want this one to actually be a little bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in close enough to where I can click and drag this corner without it being a problem. Oops. Undo. Undo. There we go. Now it's a little bigger, the explosion will be a little bigger. And I could just layer a bunch of these. And voila, I have this entire fireworks scene, right? So that's how we would use it for fireworks, okay? So I'm going to delete this layer, make a new layer, delete this one. Okay. So now we have our asset in here. Okay, so now let's talk about a sparkle effect, like that would travel along a fuse. So I'm going to go back to frame 1. I'm going to choose like a light color, maybe not quite white, but pretty close. Okay. And underneath here, I'm just going to caps lock is on again, fuse. I'm just going to make like this little fuse here, just so we have something to draw along. I can show you how you would animate it across a fuse. This would not be part of the symbol, but this is how you would utilize the symbol in your animation. Okay. Lock that layer. Let's come back up here. Back to this really light color. So after the match strikes it, it would just start off as a little dot. Real easy, right? On the next frame, F6, delete. Let's turn on our onion skin. It'll be a little bit bigger. And we're going to get these little sort of lines off of it. F6. Going to get a little bit more sparkly with these other lines off of it. And now we're basically just going to kind of go between bigger sparkles and little sparkles. We don't want them to quite line up. We want them to be a little bit varied. And if you make this loop really long, and you can do that just by copying and pasting. So let's see what we got so far. See how that kind of fizzles? So now, let's say I would just wanted to loop these few right here. Once it's getting going, right? See how that looks like a fuse? Okay, so essentially if we're gonna make this a symbol to animate with, we want these to just continue to repeat. So we're gonna say copy frames, paste and overwrite frames. Paste and overwrite frames. Paste and overwrite frames. Because what happens if we let this loop is it's going to get small again. So we essentially want to create a really, really, really long loop that will be faster than what it'll take for it to travel across the fuse. Okay. So now if we play, see how it just keeps going? Nice and easy, right? So now what we can do is we can cut this layer. It's got a save for auto recovery, insert new symbol, asset, effects, fuse spark, I suppose we could call this, and we do want it a movie clip so we can make it sparkle. So let's do paste layers. Let's come back out to scene 1. Let's drag out the fuse spark and put it right here on, whoops. Oh, nope, 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 that's not what I wanted to do. New layer, spark, okay. So now I can drag this out and stick it right on this tip and come out a ways. I guess I can't. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to go to properties, filters, and I'm going to go to glow. I'm going to change this to a white, high, make it blur so it's nice and glowy. Give it some good strength. Okay. Perfect. Now let's just preview it. How it looks when it glows. Pretty nice, right? Now we can animate this. So what we can do is we can come down, make a keyframe, say, okay, you're right here now. Keyframe, 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 you're right here now. So on and so forth as we travel up the fuse. Okay, so now let's preview it without any tweening. So you can see how it travels pretty quickly, right? So maybe it travels too quick for our taste. Let's add some frames just to make that seem a little bit better. Okay, let's preview that timing now. Maybe it's still a little fast. I'm going to pad it out just a little bit more. It also depends on your timing, your comedic timing. So if you think it moving really fast would make a better impact, then by all means, have it moved a little faster. Okay. Yeah, that seems more reasonable to me. So now what I can do is I can tween this. Create classic tween. Now let's preview. See how that travels up? One thing I can do too is as it reaches certain points where it's actually going to be curving, I can come in here with my transform tool and I can rotate it just a little bit, whatever direction it needs to go. Oops. It's kind of hard to tell since it's such a little dot to start, but you'll get the hang of it. There we go. Now if you preview it, see how it seems like it travels perfectly? So now there's one last thing we have to do, and we have to actually create a mask. And basically, name this fuse mask. So we right click, we say mask. Okay, and wherever there's a mask on here, we will be able to see the fuse. So I like to use a really obnoxious color, just so there's no doubts where the mask is and isn't. So to start, Just as long as the entire fuse is covered, that's all that matters. K to fill. Now if we lock these, you can see both of them, you'll see that you can't see the mask anymore. But what's going to happen with the mask here is when the fuse reaches this point, is we're going to erase this part of the mask. Same thing here. Oops. And you want to be really careful to get really clean cuts here. Whoops. Make sure the layer underneath is locked so you don't accidentally erase it like I did. Okay, and now if they're both locked, you'll see that it's only... What happened here? Okay. That's weird. This mask is correct. Okay, so you see what I did by accident because I didn't lock my layer? Accidentally deleted part of the fuse. So yeah, make sure your layers are locked for that very reason. Okay, so I'm gonna switch these around just so I can kind of see the path my fuse had been taking, so I can put it back in as best I can. Good enough. All right. Now let's bring fuse under fuse mask so it's indented here. And now you'll see as it travels, this will vanish. But it's not tweened yet, so we're getting kind of a chunky vanishing, right? So let's try something here. Let's see if the shape tween will work. Yeah, look at that, look at that, look at that. Okay, see there's something weird here? And that's because I had some schmutz there. So what I can do, the easiest thing to do would be actually just to frame by frame this. Instead of trying to fix the shape tween, just come in here and frame by frame just remove those segments of the mask. And make sure you have a keyframe down though before you start erasing, because otherwise you're going to end up with something pretty stagnant, okay? Now watch what happens. It's like the fuse is getting burned up, right? How easy is that? Just takes a little bit of time, but it's not that difficult, right? So again, to reiterate, the mask and the fuse line itself are not part of the symbol. This is what you would have to do in the animation scene itself, okay? So again, this is not part of the symbol, this is not part of our effects assets, this fuse and the fuse mask. This is just a technique, so you're aware of what you have to do when you do go into your scene file and you have to animate this spark, okay? All right, so Spark is in our little library here. So the last thing is a water pour. Okay. So water is a liquid, and liquid means it either contains to whatever's holding it or to whatever isn't holding it. So when water falls, it's going to be conforming to the pull of gravity. But when it hits the ground, there's going to be all this kinetic force that it's splashing out to. But because it can't just bounce like a bouncing ball, because it's not a solid, it's a liquid, it's going to splash everywhere. Okay? So let's let this save for auto recovery before we continue. Okay, so I'm going to go over to color. I'm going to choose a really nice little watercolor here. That's nice. She's a little bit desaturated so it doesn't hurt to look at. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to have a starting point, as we always do, where the water is going to be coming out of. And then in the next scene, I have a little bit more coming out. A little bit more. A little bit more. And then maybe it's starting to break apart here, right? I'm going to delete these little edges because these edges should be shifting every time. Okay, and let's say the ground's right here. So once this reaches the ground, this is going to be kind of the same, right? Except now these little ledges are going to be a little bit different each time. Let's fill this in. So I want these ledges to kind of follow down. Clear the ledges. Oops. Clear the ledges. Okay. So that's just the kind of the water pouring out portion, okay? And now we can copy like these last three or four frames. Okay. So now what you get is something kind of like that, right? And again, you can add more frames so it's not so blippy. Right? Then the next thing we're going to do is on a new layer, I'm going to lock this one, is once it hits that ground here, I'm going to have a lighter color. I'm going to just kind of little dots here because this is where it's starting to splash out. Oops. Made a mistake, didn't make a new keyframe. So now it's going to start splashing up. And we're going to have these little dots here. I'm gonna erase it each time. Make these dots fall, make some new ones kick up. Delete. New ones kicking up. These ones are falling. Delete. These ones have fallen. These ones are falling. New ones kicking up again. And last one. All these are fallen. Okay, so now if we loop through this entire thing, so you can definitely make this a much longer thing, but this is essentially what's going to happen. And the reason this is just a dot is it's just to show us where we're starting from. Whoops. Because essentially what we're going to have is like a bucket, right? So let me just add a very quick bucket. Whoops. And this water will be coming out of the furthest edge. Okay. All right. And to make the water start to stop, what we're going to do is I'm going to come back over here. What's going to happen is now this water is going to start to trickle out. So it's just going to get a little bit thinner. Still have some of those bobbles. And it's just going to kind of start to run out. It's going to get thinner and thinner. It's okay if there's a little bit of this, because that shows like there's a couple drops and stuff. Now we're seeing kind of like the last of it. Trickle down. Now this is going to be kind of like little droplets at this point. Okay, so now this is where I'm going to turn on my onion skin. I'm going to follow these last drops down. Now these drops, the ones that have hit the ground, are gonna tink off in different directions. Okay. Sit in the ground. Okay, so let's take a look at this now. Right? As for this little splishy splash, this is where we're coming next. So I'm going to select the color. On this frame, I'm going to go ahead and draw it. Same thing, these dots are falling again. F6, delete. It's getting a little smaller now, so it's not going to be quite as wide. It's just going to get skinnier and skinnier, but I do want to cover up where it is splashing. Now that's starting to break apart and dissipate, so it's not quite what it once was. Until it's basically nothing anymore. Maybe just a couple. Okay, so now what this looks like is this. Voila! You now have your water spill effect, okay? So what you can do, so it's not taking up a bunch of frames and stuff in your animation, is we can select these two, and we're gonna go to Cut Layers, Insert New Symbol, Assets, Effects, Water Pour. And we're gonna hit OK. And this one we need as a graphic. We don't need it as a movie clip because we're not doing any sort of effects to it. So we can paste the layers now. And there we go. There we have it. It's in there. You can delete that now. Alright, so here's our 3 effects for today that we went over. If you also want me to go over explosions and fire loops in addition to the videos, do let me know. And I think that's it for today. This particular file, for reference, will be made available on the drive, so go ahead and check it out under example files. And I hope this helps. So last, we're going to save as, let's see, effects, let's see, Firework, Spark, and Water Pour. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed and I wish you lots of luck. Effects animation is really fun, but it is frame by frame, so it just takes a little bit of doing. But it's pretty easy. You got this. Alright, see you later.